and welcome to the video series, Arts in Crisis, a Kennedy Center initiative. I'm Barbara Shepard, Director of National Partnerships at the Kennedy Center. During this video series, Kennedy Center President Michael Kaiser discusses a variety of issues and challenges facing arts organizations today. Michael, during this economic downturn, so many arts organizations are having to tighten their belts. I'm sure you have lots of thoughts about how best to make choices about what to cut and what not to cut. What advice do you have for those arts organizations?
This is a really important issue and a very difficult issue. Almost every arts organization is being forced to cut its budget to some extent. I know at the Kennedy Center I've had to cut millions of dollars from my budget. But where we cut is so crucial. Too many arts organizations start by cutting programming. And when you cut programming, you become a little less interesting to your public, to your ticket buyers, and to your donors. And my belief is that in this troubled time, when there's less money to be given to the arts, we have to compete more aggressively rather than less aggressively. And our programming has to be more interesting and more special, not less. So I'm very concerned for those organizations who are starting by cutting programming. I try and focus on everything else, everything back of house, everything I can cut for my staff expenses, for board member expenses, for everything we do in the organization that's not visible to the public. And I do cut a little bit out of programming. Out of each programming budget, I try and be more efficient about how I do the art, but I don't try and cut programs as a whole. Now, when you can't cut enough of everything else and you have to cut your programming, that doesn't mean your programming has to be boring. And so I very much suggest that organizations that are being forced right now to cut their programming, that they really do look at how to make some very special, simple projects that are really going to excite the public. And also, I suggest that arts organizations plan their art multiple years in advance, so that if you have to announce a slightly less interesting season this year, you can be talking about very exciting projects you're doing 2, 3, 4, or even 5 years from now. I think it's so crucial in this environment for arts organizations to be smart about how they cut their budgets, and for boards as well to understand that when you cut programming, you're in danger of going down a very, very slippery slope, where you cut a little bit this year, you might have a little bit less revenue this year because of the smaller programming budget. You might have fewer contributions, so you have less revenue in total. That forces you next year to cut a little more, to have less revenue the year after, and cut a little more, and cut a little more. And that vicious cycle is an extremely dangerous one, and too many organizations today are in danger of experiencing it. So what I would love to see arts organizations do is to take every penny they can and put it into really interesting programming, artistic programming or educational programming, and then to make sure that they support that programming with very aggressive marketing. And I promise you, if you do that, your organization will be the one to get a higher percentage of the contributions that do exist, and you can use that money to pay for the next year's programming. Please don't cut programming first.
So that's a pretty clear message to anybody, to think about the art first. That's the last thing that gets cut. What about a change in how you program? Is it safer to choose something that's more popular to program?
I'm very nervous when arts organizations only want to do popular or accessible work. I know many people in the media are saying this is what we need to do now in the arts. The problem is if everyone's doing accessible and I would call boring work, then we all look alike. We don't look distinct, and it's very hard for the donors to tell us apart and for the audience to tell us apart. I find the projects that people want to support the most are the surprising ones, the ones they didn't even know they would enjoy. And those projects are the ones that get the largest audience support and also the largest donor support. So I'm not in favor of just saying now's the time to do La Boheme every week or Phantom of the Opera every week. I don't think we compete well when we do that.
Thank you, Michael, so much. For more information about Arts in Crisis, visit artsincrisis.org. For more information about the Kennedy Center Arts Management Institute, visit artsmanager.org.